Imagine walking straight toward a wild animal because it looked friendly, then acting shocked when nature doesn't follow the script in your head. And somehow, that's still not the wildest thing people manage to do out there. Not even close. 1. A tourist once walked directly toward a bison with the same confidence people use when approaching a confused neighbor's dog, except this was a massive creature built like a prehistoric SUV, and the guy strutted forward calling, "Come here, buddy," as if he were summoning a lost house pet who needed emotional reassurance. Meanwhile, the bison stared with the ancient, stone-faced expression of an animal who has seen centuries of human stupidity and ranked this somewhere in the top 10. And the tourist kept inching closer, ignoring the growing audience of horrified bystanders silently preparing to witness natural consequences. And right as he lifted his phone to take a cute bonding photo, the bison took one slow step forward, just one, and the man instantly switched careers from fearless explorer to panicked track star, sprinting like the earth had opened beneath him, later claiming he sensed tension in the air, when everyone else sensed only the overwhelming aroma of poor judgment. 2. A woman approached a massive elk like she was greeting a shy child at a birthday party, hands out, voice soft, repeating, "It's okay, sweetheart," as if this towering wild animal needed her emotional coaching, and she crept forward with the kind of serene smile usually reserved for yoga instructors who believe intentions shape reality, while the elk lowered its head with that slow, unimpressed motion animals use when deciding whether to leave or demonstrate why space matters. And she kept soothing it, explaining to onlookers that animals respond to calm energy, which was bold considering the elk was radiating, "You have exactly 3 seconds energy," and the moment she stepped too close, it stomped the ground with enough force to vibrate souls, sending her stumbling backward like someone unplugged her confidence mid-sentence. And she later insisted the elk misread her vibe, which was hilarious because the only vibe present was the unmistakable echo of a terrible idea in progress. 3. A man tried feeding a wild raccoon an entire slice of pizza, holding it out like a sacred offering, apparently under the impression that raccoons follow the same etiquette rules as polite city pigeons. And he crouched dramatically as if presenting a royal gift, completely shocked when the raccoon snatched the slice with the same enthusiasm as a pickpocket grabbing a wallet during festival season, and then darted off into the bushes like it had just committed a culinary heist, leaving the man offended, genuinely offended, shouting, "Hey, that was for you!" as if the raccoon owed him gratitude, or at least a Yelp review, and he spent the next few minutes complaining that wildlife shouldn't act like thieves, which was fascinating coming from someone who just attempted to lure a nocturnal chaos gremlin with processed cheese, basically staging a snack-based robbery and then being surprised when the more qualified criminal won. 4. A tourist dropped to one knee in front of a wild goose in an attempt to earn its trust, which was an incredibly optimistic approach to a creature whose entire brand is emotional violence. And he stretched his hand toward it like he was offering a marriage proposal, whispering nonsense about mutual respect, while the goose stared at him with the cold, calculating intensity of a creature who wakes up every morning ready for conflict. And for a moment, it actually held still, giving him the illusion of progress, right up until it lunged forward with the speed of a tax bill due tomorrow, wings flapping like judgment incarnate, sending him flailing backward in a dramatic, mud-filled collapse that would have earned a standing ovation in any slapstick comedy. And afterward, he tried to salvage his pride by telling people he was studying its behavior. Though judging by the goose's victorious honk, the only behavior truly on display was the universe punishing hubris. 5. A woman approached a wild fox because she believed it looked lonely, a statement that immediately set the tone for the disaster that followed, and she crouched down, making gentle clicking sounds like she was summoning a house cat who'd misplaced its dignity, completely unaware that the fox was already analyzing her bag, pockets, and perceived IQ like a tiny orange criminal mastermind evaluating a target. And she kept whispering, "It's okay, sweetie. I won't hurt you," while the fox's eyes flicked around like it was deciding whether to run or attempt petty theft. And just when she leaned in to offer what she called comfort, the fox vanished into the bushes with such surgical precision it looked like CGI, leaving her staring at empty space like she'd been emotionally abandoned, convinced the fox wasn't used to kind human contact, when really, it just wasn't used to humans trying to become Disney princesses in the middle of a national park. 6. A man stood inches away from a gigantic moose trying to get the perfect fearless profile photo, posing like he was about to appear on the cover of some budget wilderness magazine that specializes in spectacularly poor decisions. And he held his stance with a puffed-out chest, glancing around to make sure everyone was admiring his bravery, while the moose stood there radiating the kind of ancient, unimpressed energy that could flatten a soul with a single blink. And when the moose flicked its ear, literally just an ear, the man's expression transformed from heroic determination to existential horror in under a second, and he took off running like the forest itself had started charging, later explaining that he backed away slowly for safety reasons, even though his retreat looked less like strategy and more like the choreography of a man whose survival instinct finally located the on switch. 7. A family tried to lure a black bear closer by unwrapping granola bars and waving them like they were advertising a snack sale, with the father confidently explaining that bears love healthy stuff, as if the bear were a fitness influencer debating macros, and they giggled while shaking the bars like some bizarre wilderness maraca performance, attracting the bear's attention in exactly the way one would expect when offering free food to a large creature with zero nutritional loyalty. And as the bear started walking toward them with undeniable enthusiasm, the family's playful energy instantly transformed into Olympic-level sprinting, dropping their snacks, backpacks, dignity, and possibly several long-term goals. And afterward, they insisted the bear came out of nowhere, which was impressive, considering they summoned it like amateurs performing a ritual titled How to Meet a Predator Up Close. 8. A woman got down on the sand beside a wild seal to take a cute ocean selfie, inching closer like she was about to greet a coworker she barely knew, completely ignoring the fact that the seal was making the facial expression of someone being asked about their weekend for the 5th time, and she kept cooing soft reassurances as if that would somehow compensate for her rapidly shrinking sense of self-preservation, getting close enough that her hair practically brushed the seal's whiskers. And right as she leaned in with that forced influencer smile, the seal erupted with a single deafening bark that launched her backward into the surf like a poorly balanced folding chair, and she came up sputtering, muttering something about attitude, completely oblivious to the fact that she had ambushed a massive ocean mammal with a front-facing camera, and the seal had simply exercised its right to say, absolutely not. 9. A man tossed a chicken nugget at a wild boar to distract it, a strategy that immediately revealed his level of wilderness experience, somewhere between none and negative. And the boar stared at the nugget with absolute confusion, then looked back at the man with the unmistakable expression of, "Did you seriously just throw garbage at me?" before charging with the kind of determination usually reserved for debt collectors and toddlers denied candy. And the man's brave distraction plan dissolved instantly into high-speed chaos as he sprinted across the trail while screaming dramatically, his flip-flops bending like warm noodles under the pressure. And afterward, he tried explaining to park staff that the boar reacted aggressively, which was bold, considering he had essentially tried to resolve a boar encounter using fast food logic usually reserved for seagulls. 10. A woman tried to feed a squirrel a French fry, insisting, "Wildlife deserves treats too," holding the fry like she was presenting a gift at a woodland award ceremony. And the squirrel approached with the kind of tense, calculated energy you only see in professional pickpockets, snatching the fry with lightning speed before lunging straight for the entire bag with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered unlimited snacks exist, sending the woman spinning backward while shrieking like she'd been personally betrayed. And as her kids screamed in both excitement and terror, the squirrel sat proudly on a nearby branch, munching through its victory meal, and afterward she indignantly declared squirrels too greedy, which was interesting logic coming from the person who literally initiated a one-sided snack negotiation with a creature whose moral compass is permanently set to opportunistic chaos. 11. A guy stretched out on his stomach in front of an alligator for scale, telling everyone that the photo would help people understand its true size, which was hilarious, considering the only thing the photo truly captured was his total lack of self-preservation. And he posed there smiling, resting his chin on his hands like he was doing a glamour shoot for some wilderness-themed dating profile, while the alligator stared at him with the slow, empty-eyed expression of a reptile who has seen enough disaster to recognize its next installment. And when the alligator shifted slightly, not even toward him, just shifted, he scrambled backward so fast it looked like someone hit a fast-forward button on reality, then stood up brushing off dirt while mumbling something about never being in danger, even though the entire audience had mentally prepared for natural selection paperwork. 12. A tourist saw a mountain lion in the distance and decided the smartest move was to whistle loudly to make sure it knew he was there, creating this bizarre melody somewhere between a bird call and a teenager trying to get a waiter's attention. And he kept whistling with increasing confidence, explaining to horrified bystanders that predators respect assertiveness, while the mountain lion's stare intensified in that slow, ancient way that suggests it is calculating everything: the sound, the source, the questionable intelligence. And when it stood up silently, every cell in his face collapsed into fear, though his body pretended to casually step backward like he was just stretching his legs. And later, he claimed he established dominance, which was a very generous interpretation of a situation where his life flashed before his eyes in high definition. 13. A couple in full wedding attire walked toward a field of wild horses because they wanted authentic, magical photos, strolling forward with the dramatic energy of people starring in a low-budget romance film, completely ignoring the growing tension in the horse's posture, tails, ears, basically every obvious warning sign nature provides. And the couple held their poses, smiling through teeth so tight they looked stapled, waiting for the photographer to capture the moment. But the moment arrived in a different form when one of the horses swung its head and sent both newlyweds stumbling backward like bowling pins hit by a runaway ball. And afterward, they claimed the horses weren't cooperative, which was an incredible understatement for what happened, and an even more incredible refusal to admit that dangerous wildlife is not a prop for social media content. 14. A man howled at a wolf, an actual wolf, because he wanted to communicate, cupping his hands around his mouth and releasing a noise so awkwardly human that even the birds went silent. And he tried again, louder, as if volume would somehow compensate for accuracy, while the wolf watched with an expression of mild disgust, like someone listening to a very bad audition for a role nobody should play. And after a moment, the wolf simply turned around and walked away. Not hurried, not threatened, just deeply uninterested in whatever species of chaos had tried to make contact, leaving the man standing there triumphantly explaining that the wolf accepted his presence, which was a fascinating way to interpret being ignored by a predator who likely classified him as nothing more than background noise. 15. A woman screamed at a wild monkey that stole her snack, pointing at it furiously as if she planned to file a complaint with its manager, while the monkey sat nearby unwrapping the granola bar with the casual expertise of a lifelong thief, occasionally glancing at her with the bored contempt of someone who has successfully committed this crime 1,000 times. And she lectured it about respect, responsibility, and property rights, none of which translated into monkey language, especially given that the monkey punctuated the conversation by throwing the wrapper at her like a tiny, furry king asserting dominance. And she stood there fuming, insisting the park should enforce rules, completely unaware that the only rule the monkey recognized was take food and run, and it had executed that rule flawlessly. 16. A guy stood on a boardwalk, holding out his hat like he was calling a taxi for a pelican, convinced the bird wanted company. And he kept inching closer with the gentle enthusiasm of someone approaching a celebrity they think they have a personal connection to, completely ignoring the fact that the pelican was giving him the same dead-eyed stare of a creature who has dealt with far too many tourists pretending they're Dr. Dolittle. And when he reached out to touch its beak like he was testing the quality of a melon at the grocery store, the pelican snapped at the air with the precision of a medieval guillotine, sending him stumbling backward while squealing like a malfunctioning accordion. And afterward, he loudly announced to everyone that the bird must be territorial, which was a disappointingly gentle way to describe the fact that he had tried to pet a literal fishing dinosaur in the middle of its lunch break. 17. A family watched a wild moose walk through a campground and decided it was the perfect moment for a group photo, lining up in front of it like they were about to take the world's most questionable holiday card. And the dad kept squatting lower and lower so the moose would fit in frame, even though the animal absolutely did not sign up for this chaotic modeling gig. And the kids held poses like frozen mannequins, while the moose's face slowly shifted into the expression of someone contemplating a new career far away from humanity entirely. But they kept smiling, like this was a wholesome, magical bonding moment, right until the moose flicked its ears, a subtle but very clear "I've had enough" signal, sending the entire family scattering in different directions like nature-themed bowling pins, And afterward, the mom insisted the moose ruined the picture, as if the wild animal was the one demanding retakes. 18. A woman climbed onto a rock beside a wild gator because she wanted to show how calm they really are, which was an incredible scientific conclusion given she had spent exactly 6 seconds observing it, and she waved at her friends to start filming as if she were hosting a wildlife documentary filmed entirely by people who skipped the section about danger. And she posed dramatically with one hand on her hip while the gator sat frozen with that blank, slow-thinking reptile expression. And just when she thought she had proven her point, the gator exhaled, literally just exhaled, producing a low, rumbling hiss that sent her scrambling so violently she nearly rolled off the rock like a bowling ball with trust issues, and afterward, she insisted she never felt unsafe, which was impressive confidence, considering her exit strategy looked like emergency parkour performed by someone who had never parkoured in their life. 19. A tourist held out a cookie to a wild deer like he was negotiating a peace treaty, and he slowly crept closer while whispering nonsense like "easy buddy," as if this deer owed him emotional vulnerability. And instead of accepting the offering politely like a polite woodland gentleman, the deer executed a perfect snatch-and-grab maneuver before immediately lunging at his backpack with the enthusiasm of a Black Friday shopper spotting the last flat-screen TV, sending him spinning around while shouting, "Hey, personal space!" which was comedic given he had initiated the entire encounter by ignoring all possible boundaries. And as the deer chased him around in a chaotic circle, grabbing at zippers like it was trying to open a vending machine, the guy kept yelling about respect, completely oblivious to the fact that he had attempted to build trust with a wild animal using processed sugar and misplaced confidence. 20. A man approached a bighorn sheep while flexing his arms for a photo, convinced his gym membership somehow qualified him to stand next to a creature built like the final boss of a mountain-themed video game, and he walked forward with the swagger of someone doing a slow-motion entrance in their imagination, while the sheep stared with a calm but deeply judgmental expression, like it was evaluating the man's life choices and finding them disappointingly predictable. And he held his pose just a little too long, smirking at the camera as if he were proving something to humanity, until the sheep took one deliberate step forward. Not a charge, not a threat, just a mild repositioning. And he instantly launched into a sprint so panicked, his feet barely kept up with the direction his soul was fleeing, later telling people he ran to give it space, which was a poetic way to describe being spiritually humbled by a hoofed animal. 21. A couple walked up to a wild ostrich with the confidence of people who have never once Googled ostrich behavior, and the woman giggled while holding out her hand like she expected the bird to delicately sniff her fingers like a polite Victorian gentleman, while the ostrich stared with a wide-eyed, suspicious expression that felt like a warning from the universe. But they kept inching closer anyway, talking about how majestic it was, until the ostrich suddenly shoved its head forward at lightning speed, snatching her sunglasses clean off her face like a feathered mugger, and then strutted away triumphantly, wearing the look of a creature who had just upgraded its fashion, leaving her screaming after it like she thought she could negotiate a return. And afterward, they called the ostrich rude, which was a fascinating interpretation of a theft they personally set up by volunteering themselves as snack dispensers with accessories. 22. A guy tossed a handful of chips toward a group of wild ducks as if he were hosting some kind of chaotic pondside buffet, and the ducks responded with the same frenzied intensity as people diving for free concert tickets, swarming him in a flapping spiral of quacks, wings, and incoming beaks. And instead of backing away like any reasonable human, he tried to lead them by running in circles, holding the chip bag aloft like a confused cult leader summoning followers, causing the ducks to chase him with the unstoppable momentum of feathered missiles, and he shrieked while dropping chips everywhere like confetti at a very stressful parade. And once the ducks finally scattered, he gasped out of breath and declared they were too aggressive, which was an odd complaint coming from the man who basically hosted a snack rave for animals who specialize in unhinged enthusiasm. 23. A tourist approached a wild turtle on the trail with the dramatic seriousness of someone meeting a celebrity, crouching down to help it cross, even though it was very obviously not crossing but simply existing, minding its business like a tiny shelled philosopher. And the man kept narrating its journey with emotional commentary, explaining how turtles need guidance, while the turtle stared in slow motion with an expression that translated perfectly to, "Please stop narrating my life." And when he tried lifting it to a better direction, it flailed in quiet protest, turning the moment into an awkward ballet of limbs and unintended kicks, and he stumbled back like he had been betrayed by nature itself, then insisted to everyone around that the turtle was acting strangely, which was remarkable, because the only strange behavior was the unsolicited rescue mission for an animal that clearly had no interest in being spiritually redirected. 24. A woman approached a peacock spreading its feathers and said, "Wow, it likes me," misinterpreting the universal bird signal for "I am seconds away from unleashing chaos." And she kept stepping closer with the enthusiastic confidence of someone who mistakes warning signs for compliments, bending down to take a gorgeous close-up, while the peacock stared at her with the exact expression of someone preparing for dramatic conflict, and she held her phone a little too close to its face, triggering a sudden explosion of flapping wings and furious screeching that sent her stumbling away like she'd just been attacked by a sparkly, aggressive bouquet. And afterward, she insisted the peacock lost its temper, which was hilarious, because the only one losing anything was her grip on basic wildlife understanding. 25. A guy tried giving a wild yak a fist bump, walking toward it with the confident swagger of someone who genuinely believed this massive horned creature would appreciate casual human gestures. And he held out his knuckles like he was greeting a friend at the gym, waiting for some magical interspecies acknowledgement, while the yak stared with an expression that bordered on holy confusion, and right as he got close enough to smell the distinct aroma of "you should not be here," the yak snorted loudly and stomped, sending a shockwave through his entire body like reality itself was hitting him with a nope. And he sprinted back toward his group, flailing like a wind-powered inflatable tube man, shouting that the yak wasn't in the mood, completely ignoring the fact that it was never in the mood for absurd gestures from mammals who think wildlife enjoys bro culture. 26. A woman saw a sea lion lounging on a dock and decided it needed company, sitting herself right beside it like she was joining a coworker on lunch break, and she started talking to it in a soothing voice about how peaceful the ocean must feel, while the sea lion stared forward with the vibe of someone pretending not to hear an annoying neighbor, until she slid just a little too close, causing it to erupt in a bark so loud it practically rearranged her priorities, and she shot up and stumbled backward like she'd been launched by an invisible catapult, shrieking dramatically while the sea lion simply blinked like nothing happened. And afterward, she told everyone she must have startled it, which was impressive, considering she was the one who turned a sunbathing marine mammal into a reluctant participant in her uninvited therapy session. 27. A man tried to film himself doing mindful breathing next to a wild bison, setting up his tripod like he was recording a meditation video titled "How to Make Terrible Choices," and he sat cross-legged mere feet from the animal, inhaling deeply like he was pulling serenity straight out of the ozone layer, ignoring the giant, horned creature behind him casually chewing grass and radiating the kind of energy that says, "I could end this at any moment." And as he began his slow third exhale, the bison snorted with enough force to blow dust into the air, making him leap up and spin around like someone had fired a starter pistol at a yoga retreat. And afterward, he claimed the bison interrupted his practice, as if it were the rude one in this story. 28. A woman waved her scarf at a wild camel trying to get its attention for a photo, flapping it around like she was signaling a plane to land, and the camel watched her with unblinking disdain, chewing slowly like it was processing an especially stupid email, and she kept twirling the scarf closer and closer until the camel lunged forward and grabbed it with its massive lips, tugging so hard she spun like a malfunctioning carnival ride, shrieking while trying to keep her balance, and the camel calmly chewed the scarf as if critiquing its flavor. And afterward, she stomped around demanding someone control the aggressive animals, even though she was the one who initiated a fashion-focused tug-of-war with a creature known for biting, spitting, and having zero interest in textile safety. 29. A tourist walked up to a flock of cranes with a bag of bread, convinced he was about to create the world's most wholesome wildlife moment, and he scattered pieces around with a dramatic flourish while declaring himself a friend to nature, which the cranes interpreted as free chaos buffet, immediately swarming him in a screeching whirlwind of wings and long stabbing beaks, and he panicked, dropping the entire bag as they trampled over his shoes like tiny feathery velociraptors, and he screamed, "I'm helping you," while running away, which was deeply ironic given the birds clearly disagreed with the definition of help. And afterward, he insisted they were ungrateful, as if he hadn't just reenacted a scene from a low-budget dinosaur film. 30. A couple tried to sneak close to a sloth hanging in a tree because they wanted a cute slow-motion moment, whispering loudly as if sloths appreciate commentary, and they crept closer with exaggerated stealth, ignoring branches, leaves, insects, and the general concept of being normal. And right as they leaned in for the perfect shot, the sloth suddenly moved. Not fast, but fast for a sloth, swinging its arm in a surprisingly decisive arc that smacked the man's hat clean off his head like a hairy, unbothered judge delivering a sentence. And the couple froze, completely scandalized, as if the sloth had broken some silent agreement to remain adorable and passive. And afterward, they insisted the sloth lashed out, which was an impressive interpretation considering the sloth's entire act lasted 2 seconds and delivered the most peaceful disrespect imaginable. 31. A tourist spotted a family of wild pigs and decided he wanted a selfie in the middle of the group, which is the kind of thought that only forms in the mind of someone who has never met a pig or a group of anything. And he stepped toward them, grinning, phone raised, narrating his bravery like he was filming a behind-the-scenes special. But the pigs instantly scattered, not away, but around him, circling with the chaotic speed of grocery carts in a crowded aisle, bumping into his legs, squealing, grunting, and turning the scene into a porcine tornado of confusion. And he spun helplessly in place, trying to keep his balance while still attempting the selfie, until he finally bolted out of the swarm screaming. And afterward he complained that the pigs ambushed him, which was hilarious because they were just living their lives while he volunteered to become the center of their unplanned stampede choreography. And that's today's tour of human brilliance in the wild. Drop your dumbest animal encounter in the comments and hit subscribe if you survived the cringe.